Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to CAD 230, Introduction to Solidworks, and our first Zoom classroom meeting. We'll be holding these Zoom classroom meetings on, today I'm going to hold it on Tuesday, and then I'm going to talk to the class about moving it to Mondays. Typically, I put the Zoom meeting on the same day as I have for the class meeting when it's in person. And so I'll poll you guys after the class and see if we want to keep it on Tuesday or if we want to move it to Monday evening. But I will put that in the announcement, and I will have a Zoom classroom meeting every week at 6 p.m. And it'll either be on Tuesday at 6 p.m. or Monday nights at 6 p.m. There's two options to support students. You can VPN into an Oakton computer to run SolidWorks, or you can download the Student Design Kit. I recommend downloading the Student Design Kit as we start to work with it. If you have a computer at home that's capable of running SolidWorks, it's a great software and you can download that to your computer. There's a link right here that shows you how to download. And so if I click on that and I increase the magnification, this number in purple is very important. That's the number that you will use to get to the student download so that it will work for you. And so you can check the system requirements to make sure that your computer has capability of running it. And then when you go to this website, solidworks.com/SEK, you go through and you can fill in this information, and we'll be using the 2223 version of the software. And so what you'll do is you'll go put in your first name, last name, and use your Oakton email, the .edu email, so that it knows that you're a student, and that way they can verify that. I'm going to pause the video while I let a student in. Resuming. So as we go through, you'll check off I have a serial number that starts with 9020, and that'll be this number here, 9020. And you'll put that SolidWorks number in after you request the download. And it's really quite reliable. It'll go through and just start installing. If you do have any information and you need to get more information, you can get it from this installation guide. You can also contact technical support for students at this address. And then there's a frequently asked questions that you can link on to see if there's any frequently asked questions that you can get access to. If you VPN into the software, the instructions are right here. I will VPN occasionally. I'm not going to demonstrate that at this point, but if you have any difficulty with the VPN, you can contact the help desk at 635-1965, and they can assist you with the VPN aspects. We'll be using the textbook SolidWorks 2022 Basic Tools by Paul Tran. You can get this book at the bookstore, or you can get this book at SDC Publications. It's also available in digital format, and so if we take a look at SDC Publications, here's the textbook right here. And you can click on this purchase options. And so I'm using Red Shelf. Red Shelf is a great way to get digital books. And so I'll have like a copy of the textbook from Red Shelf right here if you're a digital person. If you like the paper textbook, you can also purchase that. And so you can purchase that at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's a pretty reasonably priced textbook. And if you're receiving a grant, or if you have a scholarship or something like that, you need to buy it from the bookstore, just stop in the bookstore and tell them you're in CAD 230 and that you'd like to purchase the textbook. We'll go through the chapters, chapter by chapter, and I'll post announcements here in the main splash page. I'll also go through and I'll put in when the labs are due. And so you want to keep an eye on the calendar for the upcoming events, and then you can kind of see what's due and when it's due. And so lab 1 will be due on the 24th, which will be next week. And I will also ask you to do the under quizzes and exams, there's a pre-test, and I'll talk about that as we continue on. If you're new to the online course, the way that it works is we use this Desire to Learn, D2L for short, course management. And it has content, and it has discussions, assignments, quizzes, grades, checklists, class lists, groups, and more tools. I typically will use the content, assignments, and quizzes and grades. I don't really do much with the discussions at this point, but maybe we'll go and talk about some of the designs at some future time. If we look at the content section and we take a look at the overview section, in the overview, I've just got some information, welcome to the class. I'm Joe Cerrone, and the best way to email me is within D2L. And so there's a little link at the top of the D2L right here, message alerts, where you can email me. And if you email me, I'll get a little orange bubble here that'll pop up and let me know that somebody's looking for me. You can call me at 847-376-7612. We'll use the same Zoom link every week. And so I'll have that posted in the announcements, but this should be the same link. And we'll use the D2L to kind of organize the course so everybody can stay on task. We'll use the textbook and we'll follow that chapter by chapter. And then I'll bring in some of the course material that I have that is there to kind of help you. I like this older book, Solidworks 2010. It's kind of old, but it's a great book. It's got some really good exercises, and I'll give those exercises as bonus content. And so I was a mechanical designer before I started here at Oakton. I was a design engineer for Komatsu Dresser. Komatsu makes the big excavators that you'll see on the side of the road for construction. And I also worked at ITW Signode as a design engineer, where I did packaging machines, and I designed the machines that put the green plastic strap on the 2x4s you see at Home Depot and Menards. So next time you're in Menards and you see the green plastic straps, that was probably put on by one of the machines that we used to make over at ITW Signode there. I have office hours over at Skokie. I'm in there on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, and Sunday mornings, and by appointment. I'm there quite a bit more than that. So if you need an appointment, you can always email me and ask me if you'd like to meet in person. If you would like to come in on one of these days, let me know, and you're welcome to come in and work in the labs and then stop in and get some extra help. I'll hold these weekly Zoom meetings to go over the assignments. Attendance is not required. This is an asynchronous course, which means that the course is kind of set up to run automatically. But I tell all the instructors who run the CAD courses online that I want them to check in every week and post videos to make sure that everybody stays on track as far as what they need to know to do. And so that's how I run the online courses. And I've been running the online courses since 2007. Actually, we started with the online courses with AutoCAD, and then we bridged into the SolidWorks. So that's the overview. If we look at the syllabus, PDFs load a little bit faster. I put the word processing file in the PDF there because it helps me manage the course and keep everything in one place. This is CAD 230 OC1 Intro to SolidWorks. It's 4 credit hours. And here's my email, my regular email, jcerrone. This is the link to a web page. I need to update this a little bit, but if you're interested in finding out a little bit about your instructor, you're welcome to click on that. My office is located in Skokie, room P131. It's in the back of the machine shop, and it's a great shop. I like working there. If you're in the neighborhood, feel free to stop by and say hello. I'll be in there on Wednesdays and Sundays and by appointment. There's no prerequisites for the course. You can just kind of jump in. I do that because I get a lot of people who have taken SolidWorks and will want to take advanced courses or additional courses. And so sometimes the prerequisites can be a way that people can't get into the course. And so most of the CAD courses, if you take like intermediate or advanced, they'll have recommendations that you take these other courses, but they're not requirements. We'll look at theory and application of solid modeling techniques for product design and manufacturing using Solidworks. We'll work with sketches, and we'll work with these different features. Every week we'll go through these different features that are within the textbook, and then we'll create these assembly drawings. We'll apply constraints, and we'll just continue to work with the software to kind of develop our skill set as we go through. And so here's our learning objectives as we go through. We want to just be able to make, and SolidWorks is really a manufacturing tool. It's an engineering and manufacturing tool. So most of the drawings are mechanical in nature, and we start off with 2D sketches as we start to work with SolidWorks, and we also go through and add constraints to fully define our sketches. So we have solid, valid models that we can use. And we'll go through different techniques like extruding, revolving, and lofting. And as we continue to go through, we'll continue to add to our list of skill sets. We'll go through and examine mass properties and centers of gravity. A lot of the SolidWorks examinations, if you decide to get a professional examination, we'll use these techniques to verify the model's integrity. And so they'll have you model a part, and then they'll ask you to assign a material to it, like aluminum or stainless steel, and then they'll ask you the mass properties, like how much does it weigh based on the density of that material. And if it's properly modeled, it's usually right on. Academic integrity. Do your own work. It's really not the kind of place you want to wind up in. I've had a couple of experiences, not very many, where students have had some problems with this, and it's really not worth it to go through and have to go through these academic integrity areas. If you can't get your work done, email me and ask me for an extension, or just take the lower grade. But as you go through it, it's a course that really most people will take because they want to learn it, not because they have to take it to get into some other program. So I usually don't have problems with that, but just like to say that as far as the outline of topics, we're going to cover chapter by chapter through the textbook. We'll start with sketching and relations. We'll go through the interface, and then we'll create part drawings, assembly models, midterms. We'll go through things like hole wizards, a 3D printing project. I like to work with 3D printing. I've got a 3D printing course, and we can create these models and turn those in and print the parts. I'm not sure what my 3D printer project is on this one. I think it's either a vise or a clamp, and I'll check that in the D2L. You're also will be given a certification voucher, and you can take a SolidWorks certification exam if you'd like to get industry certified, and that's the Certified SolidWorks Associate exam. They typically charge $100 for that exam, but since you're in the course, they give me these license vouchers that I will give to you if you'd like to take that exam. As we go through the course and we look at how it's laid out, since it's an online course, we'll have videotapes that are created that show how to create the models, and most people really like it. I've been working with these videotapes, and I've trained the instructors. You'll notice that one of the instructors has done the videos for the first couple of chapters, and he did such a great job. I decided to use his videos to kind of get the course started, but I'll introduce more of my own as we go in. And as we go through, you can basically follow the chapters, watch the videos. You don't have to watch the videos. We don't, keep track of that. But typically people like the videos because you can rewind them and look at the technique exactly as how it's created. Figure you'll spend a good 10 hours a week on your work. If you want to do more work, I'd be happy to give you more work on that. Maintain a portfolio of assignments and exercises. It's always great when somebody, finishes the course and gets an interview with a job and starts working in a field. And it's very rewarding to me, as I've been teaching classes since the 90s. You know, as I get older, to meet people and see how they're doing in their careers. Try to hand in your work on time. You know, if you're consistently late, usually I'll give you a warning the first time or two, but after that, I'll start to deduct points. And each module is typically worth 24 points. And so it'll be 3 points, 2.5 points off if it's late. Again, we'll use this textbook. You can get it at STC Publications. You can order it online. You can get an ebook through Red Shelf. My contact information again. I guess I'm a little redundant on that. Grading scale is 90, 80, 70, 60. If you do the work and you do a good job, you shouldn't have a problem getting a B, is what I tell most students. But to get an A, it's got to be perfect. You've got to do a really good job, and that's really the way it is out in industry. You can't do something 80% and expect to kind of keep going with those kind of things. In industry, it is precise, and Solidworks is a very precise tool. Other course information, they have a lot of support for students, and so we want people to think of Oakton College as a place that if you do have some difficulties, that you can get help if you do need it. You know, whether it's medical and you need somebody to talk to, or whether it's something, you know, that's other related that you might want to talk to a counselor about. And so those resources are available, and we put that in the syllabus to let students know that if they do need some assistance, that it's available. Back to the table of contents. Student version of Solidworks. I had to go through a few hoops to make sure that this was correct. The latest document is this last one right here, Oakton Community College. I just got it this morning, but it's the same as the one that I was using before. And so, like I say, I put the PDF in the Word document in just in case I have to make some edits. I keep everything here the same, but if I click on the PDF here, this is the number that you will use to download the software. And then just like I talked about before, you can check your system requirements and how to download and install that software. And then this message says the same thing right here. They just made it a little bit more up to date. And so this is what the new rep from Solidworks says. And the guys at Solidworks are great. I don't know if you have it at your company, but we'll work with CATI, Computer Aided Technology Incorporated. I believe they're out in Buffalo Grove area. And the guy who runs the technical support was one of my former high school students from the 90s. And so guy's great. His name is Josh, and he's very good with SolidWorks as well. If you ever go out there and do any training, say hello for me. But it basically says the same thing, that you'll use the same serial number and that you'll be able to download that software. And this is my account rep that I can contact if I need customer service or if you need customer service. But the installation isn't too bad from a standpoint of most people can install it and get that running. It is a Windows-based software, so you cannot put it onto a Mac unless you have it partitioned for Windows. If we look at Module 1, Module 1 basically is going to go through, in our learning objectives, or to go through the interface, system options, templates, and basic modeling in the first 3 chapters within the textbook. And so we can watch Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and the SolidWorks interface video, and we've graphically illustrated that here for you as we go and take a look at it. And then the first 3 assignments would be this assignment right here from the chapter, this assignment right here, and this assignment right here. And then as we look at this, we put in a copy of the Chapter 3 for you so that you can, if you haven't gotten the textbook yet, you can kind of be able to get the assignment started. And so it's a little bit earlier, but the assignment's basically the same, where we'll go through and we'll work on creating these different solid models and the steps to create those solid models. And as we go through and we look at these exercises and the way that they are set up, we start off with extrusions. And so we'll start off with basic solid modeling extrusions. they'll go through and they'll introduce these different viewing commands, dimensioning standards that we'll use. We'll use ANSI, American National Standards Institute. Some of the drawings will be in millimeters, some of the drawings will be in inches, and so we'll look at the units of measurement and we'll set those up. And then they have these different glyphs that will show you how to use the different commands. And so we'll start with sketches. We'll use the line command, circle commands. We'll add geometric relations and what they call smart dimensions. And then we'll add some fillets and trim and use boss extrude. So we'll come back to this chapter as we continue on with the Zoom meeting, back to the content and the outline of topics. In Module 1, and I have the first 3 modules on, and if you did early access, you'll notice I kind of updated it. I decided to go with last semester's, and I'll introduce some more of my own content as we go along. But as we go and we take a look at this, the videos are great. We're going to work on these 3 assignments. And so the Chapter 1 video right here, we'll talk a little bit about how to configure SolidWorks, or at least how to go through and work with the setup. And so this first video, you're going to want to take some time and go through and take a look at how to set up your SolidWorks. I don't really do much with the first 2 chapters other than the kind of references. Everything out of the box works fine the way it is. And so you really don't need to make any changes to the SolidWorks system options. As we start going and creating these different models and things, the biggest thing that we'll work with will be setting up the units of measurement and decimal precision. But we don't do a lot as far as going through and setting up the display or working with the performance assemblies and things like that. Locations of file locations, you'll want to see where your template files are located at if you want to use a template. I typically bring in templates in the second class in Mike Durso's intermediate SolidWorks class. And so the video will go through and explain everything that's in Chapter 1. And so there's not a real big reason for me to go through and redo the entire videos because they're already there. But watch the video in Module 1 for Chapter 1. And we also have the video for Chapter 2 on the templates. Chapter 2 is really pretty short, and the video is right here for Chapter 2. And so Chapter 2 goes through working with these templates, setting up the units, going through the basic interface and getting started. And we'll do that as well. Once I complete the first Zoom video, I can open things up and we can then work within the class. And so we'll go through those different applications from the chapters in the textbook. And you're welcome to ask questions on our weekly Zoom meetings about those. And then if I come back here to Module 1, we can go through and look at Lab 1A, or rather at the SolidWorks interface. And you really want to spend a little bit of time on the SolidWorks interface so that as you go through and you start using SolidWorks, you become familiar with the different terminology. And so we have a video for that as well, CAD 230 Interface Part A. And then as we go through and we start working with these different labs, here's Lab 1A, how to create Lab 1A. And then here's Lab 1B, Lab 1C. And we'll do those, I'll do those personally. And then as we go through, you know, I'll get my video, my bonuses are there. Looks like it just kept the videos. I'll have to add in the actual assignment part. So, and then some of the information as far as to how to work with SolidWorks. If we download this PowerPoint and open it, and it really depends. I didn't hook up my wired connection on this, so it might take a little bit of time here before I'm able to actually show you that. So I'll pause the video while we're waiting for that. So as we go through and we start to work with the course, you're going to want to go through, watch the videos, and then create these different part models. And so Lab 1A will create this model that's shown right here. And so it's just this object right here, kind of a widget. And then as we go through and we create these different models and we start looking at Solidworks and working with Solidworks, we'll get familiar with the interface. So for example, when we look at this side menu tree here, we have the different commands that we'll work with. And so if we start a new file, you'll have the ability to create a part file, an assembly drawing, and a part drawing. And so it has 3 different functions that work within SolidWorks. And you can set it for advanced or you can set it as basic. If we click on that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to start with a part file. We'll go back to novice, part file, and OK that. And then if we take a look at the actual textbook itself, what I typically do is when I start these off is I'll pin this menu bar right here open. And so there's a little pin to hold that open and you'll be able to get the commands that you can invoke this way. If we look at the different commands, we'll also go through and set up certain features within that. First thing that we typically do is we'll go into our system options, document properties, units, and we'll set up our units. By default on my home laptop, it's setting up an inch/pound second IPS. And so we'll say OK. You'll be able to see that information down here at the bottom of the screen as well. And so you'll be able to see that you're in the proper units. Typically what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll set this up so that it's a plain white background by clicking there and setting it up at plain white. And then as we look at these different areas within SolidWorks, I'm going to bring in the textbook here. And so if I go to my SolidWorks textbook and we look at the introduction to SolidWorks user interface, what we're looking at is these different planes. And what we do is we create these sketches on the different planes. And so the first thing that we'll do is we'll start to set up these different sketch planes that we can work with. And so you have the sketch planes that are available. And then we have the feature manager over here on the left-hand side. Here's our origin triad reference telling you which way is up, X, Y, and Z. And here's our origin. And then we have this task pane over here on the right-hand side. And then as we go through and we work at these different planes, what we'll do is we'll select these different planes per our instructions. And so if we looked at chapter 3 here, and we were going to go ahead and start working on chapter 3, what we would do is we would start off, verify our units are in inches, 3 decimal places. This is information about what they call parent-child relation. As we start creating different features, other features will depend on previous features that we created, and that's what's known as the parent, and then the children will be the features that are dependent upon those features. We can start by creating a part file. Typically, like I just did, we'll change the background color to plain white, hide or show the origin, and then we'll create these different sketches on the different planes. And so it'll start us off, select the front plane, and create a sketch on that. And so if I come back and I put this over on my second screen, and come back to my SolidWorks, so here's the new part that I created. If you hover over the sketch planes, you can see them. If you right click on the sketch planes, you can turn on their visibility by clicking on the eye. And these are in the video about the interface. You can see where the origin's right there at the center of that part. And then as we start to go through the course material and we take a look at it, we'll select the front plane as the first plane to sketch on. And so we'll go over here and we'll say sketch, create a sketch. We'll select the front plane. And what that'll do is it'll line up the front plane. I don't need to see the top plane, so I'm going to right click on that and turn off the visibility of that. And then as we start to look at how you work with SolidWorks and we create these different sketches, what we'll do is we'll start off by creating different lines. And as we work with the mouse, what happens is we'll get these relations and feedback for those relations. And so if you hover over a relation, what it will do is it will wake up that relation and allow us to start acquiring the geometry for that relation. And so as we go through and we take a look at the technique for using SolidWorks, what we'll do is we'll start by creating a line by clicking and holding the left mouse button, and then dragging a line up vertically. And then we'll drag that line out to the right. And we'll create this basic geometry. It's different from AutoCAD because you actually create these different shapes as we go through and we create them. And as you create the different shapes, what I tell people is keep an eye on kind of the relative size and layout for what you're creating, because as we create those, it gets a little wonky on you if the scales are kind of off. And so, for example, if I was going to go ahead and start to work on this drawing right here, what I would do is I'd come back here to my SolidWorks. I'm in the front plane, and I'd select the line command. I'd acquire the origin by waking it up and then clicking on it. And then as I bring this up vertically, you see that little yellow line. That's what's called a relation, and that means it's vertical. And so this is going to be 4.5 inches tall. So I'm going to turn the mouse wheel, bring that up about 4.5 and click. And then I'll bring it over about 1/2 inch, click, bring this down, bring it over, bring it up. If you bring this like this, it's an auto relation, and that's fine. I'm going to avoid the auto relations right now so I can show you how relations work. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect, you know, as we go through and we create this. And when we create a closed boundary shape, it will be filled in, and you'll be able to see that you now have a closed boundary shape, and we'll be able to work with that. Up here we have these different commands for centering the zoom, and so we can zoom to fit. You can turn the wheel on the mouse. I'm going to turn off my front plane by right clicking and turning off the eyeball on that. And then as we start to work with SolidWorks, we can go through and do things like starting to add in the dimensions. And so I can go here to Smart Dimension, and I can select this line right here. It tells me that as measured it's 4.4 inches, but it lets me update that, and I'm going to update that to 6.5. And what that'll do is that will then scale it appropriately. And then I can go through and I can do things like add relations to it, where I can go here to my relations, add relations, and I can then select the bottom of these and populate the relations for those, and then I can set those up. And so if I go through, let me do that one more time. We'll make those collinear, which will make them all even. And then we can create other relations where the top of these we can set and make them all equal, so that once I have a dimension on there, it will be equal. Green check mark means that I've completed the task. And then as we go through and we start to work with it, I can go through and I can start adding more smart dimensions. And I realize I'm kind of off the book a little bit, but I have videos for this already. And so I have videos that will show you step by step how to create this. And so what I like to do is I just like to teach, show technique as we go through and we start to work with it. And so as we add these dimensions, you'll notice that the lines start to turn black. And what that means is that they're fully defined, or it knows exactly where that is in relationship to the origin. And so as I go and I add more dimensions, I can add dimensions like this 4.5 inch dimension here. And then I can add dimension here, 3.5. And so as we start to add these dimensions and we will start to fully define our model, you can move the dimensions. If I hit the escape key and grab the dimensions and move them, if I want these dimensions to be on the other side, I can pull them over here. Neatness counts. You know, as a design engineer, other people will oftentimes work on your models, and you get a reputation for, you know, having good models that other people will want to use, and vice versa. You know, if people look at how you make your work and it's not right and they've got to redo everything, then they want to build in more time to actually get those things done. But as I go through and start to create these different dimensions, I can put these different linear dimensions on here. And then once I have all the dimensions added, it'll tell me that it's fully defined. And so it's fully defined, and it's all the lines are black like that. And these are what's called relations. And so as we work with Solidworks, this is what really makes it an excellent program, is that this little equal relation, and it'll highlight the other equal relations for those, tells me that these are all equal in length. And so if I make an update to this one from half an inch and double click on that and maybe make that 0.75, then all of them will update to that. And I can also undo that with the backward undo key to go back to the previous version. And so the first thing we do is we start working with these different sketches. And here's my sketch in the feature manager. It tells me that I've created that sketch. And then once I've created that sketch, what I'll do is I'll create a feature out of it. And so I can go and hit features, extrude boss base, and then I can go through and I can create an extrusion of that part. And if I look at my textbook for that, we created these different relationships to keep these as equal. We made the bottom of them collinear. These are some examples of different relations. And then as we continue, we added these horizontal dimensions. And then we added the vertical dimensions. And as you create these different geometries, black fully defined is what we want. We want to be able to have everything located from the origin and it's known. Underdefined will be blue. We try to avoid that, but it's not the end of the world if it's underdefined. It depends on what you're making. So as you go through, if you're making something for production, yes, everything is going to be fully defined, but it takes time to do that, and we'll show you some techniques for being able to define and have SolidWorks find solutions for that. And then over define, this is kind of the most frustrating area when you start getting into creating these different geometries, and it doesn't want more than one dimension telling you the size. And so since I have 6.5 inches over here, I wouldn't want to go and add another 6.5 inches dimensions from like this point to this point, because now we have two dimensions referencing the same geometry. That would be considered over-defined, and it doesn't like that. You can turn on and off the sketch symbols with these hide show relationships within the software. And so if I come back here and I want to turn off the relationships, what I don't want to see, you can go through and you can turn off the relations. And it's escaping me at this moment, but I'm going to leave them on at this moment. But you can go through and display relations, turn them off and turn them on. I usually like to leave them on as we go through and we start to work with this. We can extrude this base, and so we can extrude this 6 inches. So if we come back here to our SolidWorks model, we can go to features and we can say extrude this 6 inches. And then it depends whether we want it to go extrude to the left or to the front, or if we want to reverse that, we can reverse it the other way. We can green check mark that once we have the extrusion created. Yes, SolidWorks will snap to the nearest point, so it will acquire these points automatically, as somebody asked in the chat as we went through this. And so as we go through and we start to create these different models, we'll go through and we'll kind of explain some of the things that we're doing with that. And then we can sketch on these different surface planes. And so this is also another really nice feature. You don't have to move around a user coordinate or anything like that. We can select this face as a planar face to sketch on, and then we can create the geometry directly on that face. And so we can go through and create a circular geometry with a 2-inch diameter, and then we can locate that. And so if I come back here to the SolidWorks and I want to sketch, what I'll do is I'll click here and I'll say start a sketch. And then it will line it up on that sketch. And we can go through and we can change the visibility so that we can actually see through the part model, show it with hidden lines if we want to. And then I can create a circle. And then I can add the dimensions for that circle according to the dimensions on the print. And so that's going to be located 3 inches from the left side and 2.25 from the top. And so I'll add a smart dimension. And see how it'll acquire that. And we'll say 3 inches. And then we need to add the diameter. We'll add a line along the bottom here and we'll trim this entities out. So we have a shape that looks like this. And so what we'll do is we'll go to the line command we'll hover, and as you go and you hover, you'll notice that it starts to wake up these different geometries. And so it's waking up the quadrants. So I'll grab that quadrant, bring this down till it acquires this one here. I'll click, I'll bring this over, and you'll notice it also will auto track up as well. And so as you get used to it, we can go and create that geometry, and then we can go to our trim command. And I like to use the power trim. We just kind of glide right through that, and green check mark that. And so we have that geometry created. You'll notice that it's a solid fill. And so once we have that created, what we're able to do then is to go through these different extrude options. And the textbook does a really great job of going through these different extrude options, like through all, up to next, up to vertex. And I'm not going to go through all of them. They're in the video. I'll just kind of give you a quick demonstration of some of these aspects that we're going to go through and create. And so essentially what it wants us to do is it wants us to go through all with those geometries. And we can come back here and we can say features, extrude boss base, and we can have it set as through all. And we can make it easier on the eyes with our display style. It's my graphics card. It'll wake it up. It's actually a pretty decent computer. Spacebar, I like the old school way of bringing up the orientation. When you look at the orientation, this is the same as this is right here. And these are your different orthographic views, your top view, your right side view, your front view. And so as we go through and we want to configure those different orientations, I prefer to go with like an isometric view to be able to see those different features as they're modeled. It gives us a bit of a summary on the extrusion, and then it wants us to fillet everything. Filleting on SolidWorks is just terrific compared to these other CAD programs, and I've been doing CAD for quite some time. I've worked on a number of different CAD systems, and SolidWorks is by far one of the best programs for this mechanical design. And so what they do here is they go through and they highlight everything and put a 0.125 radius on everything. And then we can take a look at a full preview of that. And so if we come back here to our SolidWorks part model, highlight everything, and go to our fillet command. I probably should have done the fillet command first, but it did find it anyway. And then we can set this up with a 0.125. Green check mark. And it just goes through and adds all those fillets to the model. Talks a little bit about additive and subtractive type fillets. We can save our part model. Typically I like to add some color to it. I get tired of looking at all the gray models, and so you're welcome to add some color to it. If you want to add color, you can add color by selecting the beach ball here, and then you can go through, and if I just want to have the fillets colored, it's what's already in the selected geometry. And let's say I wanted to have those as silver. I can select that and green check mark it. I can go back to the beach ball, and then I can have the part model, let's say green, and green check mark that. Save the file, save as, and then we'll save these files. You can save them to your local drive, and then put them into D2L. The way that we will turn in these assignments will be, I have XX. This is just something that goes back to when I was at College Lake County. Would be your initials, dash lab 1A. And I'll just add 2023 because I get a few models of these. And it'll save this as a SolidWorks part file. I want you to turn in the SolidWorks part files because I can't create a PDF or a screenshot. And then when we go back into D2L, what we'll work with here in D2L is to be able to turn in these assignments. And to turn in the assignments, what you'll do is you'll go to the assignments folder, and then you'll go to lab number 1, and you will see that I have a grading rubric here. And the grading rubric will go through and tell you how you will be graded. You know, is the file name correct? Are you using the proper units? Did you initiate it on the correct plane, the front plane? And if you've done everything right, you'll get a check mark and you get the full points for that criteria. Same thing for sketching. Is everything fully defined? If it's not, then you'll lose a few points. If it is, you'll get all the points. And then did you apply the features correctly? And so once you see how you'll be graded, you can go and say add a file, and then you can go through and you can browse and upload that file. And so if I go to my file for this, and I want to turn that in, I can go ahead and select it. And I thought that was the name of it. I thought I put it in that directory. I'm just going to grab this one just from a standpoint of it should be just as fine. And I'll say open. I'll add it. And then you'll see that you can add feedback here, comments. So you can use this as a way to ask questions like, you know, I have a question about, you know, or if you don't want that graded. And then you can submit that with your file. As you can see, the file is here. I don't really get too many people who will add audio or video, but you're welcome to do that. I do oftentimes cut videos really quickly for people who want to know how to do something, and I'll send it to them. It'll tell you that the assignment has been submitted, and then I will get notification within the assignments folder that I have your drawing and that it's been submitted. What I'd like students to do for next week is to go under quizzes and exams and to take the pre-test. And so there is a pre-test here, a pre-evaluation. It's not going to be scored. And so if you click on the pre-test here and you start the quiz, I don't think it'll let me do it because I'm the teacher. I have to bail out of this student mode. And then if I go to quizzes and exams and I go to the pre-test, there it is. You can go through and I can get an idea, you know, your knowledge level of SolidWorks. You know, for example, what does BOM stand for? That would be bill of material. And if we click on that, it'll be a multiple choice question. You can go through and answer that. And then another thing that we'll have, and Sebastian did a great job of setting this up, was that we're going to have you check the volume of your models. And so if I go and I look at my model right here, and I go to the Evaluate tab, I can go to Mass Properties, and then I can calculate the mass properties in cubic inches. And we'll ask you to answer the mass properties for each of the models that you turn in a quiz. Sometimes there's a little bit of a glitchiness in there, so if you do see anything that doesn't quite look right in D2L, I'll show you where that area is. If I go under, let me view it as a student again, content, and in module 1, you'll create the models of the part, and then you will create, there will be a module 1 quiz. So it looks like we just got the multiple choice quiz. I thought there was a volume quiz in here also. I'll go back and check to make sure that that's on, and you'll take the quizzes for that. And so that quiz is just a multiple choice, very similar to the other one. If I go and look at module 2, maybe it's in module 2 I have the quiz on. If not, it's a glitch and I'll fix it. Yeah, so here's a volume quiz. And so when I go into the volume quiz, then after I model these parts, I'll be able to calculate the volume of that based on my mass properties. And we'll use that as a way to keep everybody and their skills up. Alrighty, as we go through and we work with this course, I know this is kind of a long recording. Typically I break them up into smaller recordings, and I'll try to do that as we go through. I'll be in the class every week. You can see I've got a little message alert, and it basically tells me that I sent in the file 4 minutes ago, so we'll know that that's been done. And then we'll have a Zoom meeting every week. And so next week, as we go through, I'll put a announcement in the class announcements as far as to when we're going to have that Zoom meeting, and I'll post that. If you need any help with the VPN, let me know after I finish the recording, and we'll see if we can get you help with that. And then here's a video on the lab that I just did. So if you click on that, it'll walk you through. Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to CAD 2 technique for that. As we go through setting up the units, creating the geometry. And the information for that. Alrighty, I'm going to go back to the main splash page. And I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll post this, and we'll open things up for questions.